Hey, Composition of a Killer fans, Dr. Cassidy here. Today we're going to do our second installment of the master's thesis on the development of a serial killer. And the first part I did earlier this week, just about 30 minutes. It's a short one because it was pretty deep information. It's a lot to cover. So today we're gonna hopefully finish it. Might have to do it in three parts. This was actually written by Meher Sharma at Eastern Illinois University, and I want to make sure that we give proper credit for his work or her work. I don't know if it's a male or a female, but certainly an excellent job that they have done on this. It's a lot of information to cover, and certainly fits with the theme of what we're doing. So today we're going to dive into the etiological theories of serial killing. And theories about the etiology of serial killing can generally be broken into two groups. That's biological perspectives and psychosocial perspectives. Biological perspectives include brain abnormalities, genetic predispositions, and other factors, whereas the psychosocial perspectives generally revolve around mental disorders, childhood trauma, and social learning related influences. So the biological perspective on serial killers focuses on malformations of the brain. Siegel in 2005 reported that brain dysfunction levels are higher in chronic criminals as compared to non-criminals. He further described a condition called minimal brain dysfunction, or MBD, where an individual abruptly but episodically engages in maladaptive behaviors such as volatile rage, but also incorporates kind and neutral states between episodes. And we see that quite a bit with our serial killers who have been able to go for years and years and years and not get caught. Bundy, certainly one of those people. BTK, one of those people. They had a completely different lifestyle outside of serial killing, and actually had a very successful life, if you will. So that's incredibly interesting. And let me remind you that this also goes towards the idea of nature versus nurture. Is minimal brain dysfunction learned behavior? Is it because of childhood trauma? Minimal brain dysfunction may result in cases entailing aggressive behavior, suicide, abuse, and motiveless homicide. Motiveless homicide is probably what we're looking at in California. In their study of 165 motiveless murders from all over the world, Lang and DeWitt found that many serial killers had some form of head injury or organic brain abnormality. And I have a podcast on serial killers who reportedly had head injuries when they were young, and there's great studies on that. So it's possible that some head injuries, depending on where they're hit in the head, can cause someone to have that MBD. And you probably know that I had a traumatic brain injury when I was 3 years old. I was hit by a car. They didn't call it that back then, but that's basically what happened. And I'd like to think that I'm fairly normal. maybe not normal, because I do enjoy talking about and learning about the childhood experiences of serial killers, and perhaps that's not normal. But I think because of the lens that I'm trying to look through to do this, which is, as an educator, being the best that I can be serving children, then I think that that's different. I just think it's different. You may think differently, and that's quite all right. You have that right. They concluded by stating that because of the neurological dysfunctions giving rise to seizures, serial killers act out during periods of uncontrollable brainwave activity, further causing compulsive behaviors. Aleli and others also suggested head injury as a cause, but added other conditions affecting the brain, such as meningitis. During the serial killer's early years, brain damage is suggested as a factor contributing to aggressive behavior. Significant head injury during childhood or prenatal years may result in a deformed prefrontal cortex or dysfunctions in dopamine and or serotonin levels, thus leading to a predisposition to serial killing. Aleli concluded that there exists a complex interaction between predisposing neurodevelopmental complications such as a head injury, stressful and or traumatic environmental incidents, and serial killing. I I tend to 110% believe this. I think that there's definitely a complex interaction between a predisposed neurodevelopmental complication, such as a head injury, and the stressful or traumatic environment, that early childhood trauma that we talk about. And I mean, that's the crux of the issue. That is literally what we're trying to figure out. What does this stress do to our children? What does this abuse do to our children? Are we raising serial killers? And believe me, think about it. At this moment, someone is raising a serial killer. You're not going to get rid of You're not going to get rid of serial killers. You're not going to get rid of violent offenders. So someone right now is raising a serial killer, and that terrifies me. And if that doesn't terrify you, I mean, you're ignoring reality. The grim reality of being in education is that we touch thousands of children's lives, thousands, in the course of our career. And I know there are many of us who can think back to a particular student and think, if that kid something didn't give, if they didn't get some sort of major intervention, they're going to be, maybe they are in jail, violent offender. Maybe they're serial killers. A lot of these people don't get caught. So I'm not sure why that it's not still a very sensationalized issue, because it affects every single part of our lives. And I think that if you love children and you love teaching and educating, that you want to do what's best for that child no matter what. So the more we know, the better we get. Another biological perspective traced violence and criminality to a biochemical imbalance, both neurochemical imbalances and non-neurochemical imbalances. Now, also, in my family, we have a neurochemical imbalance that is hereditary, and some of us have it and some of us don't. My grandmother's, all of her sisters but one has that, or had that neurochemical imbalance. They've all passed away. And so the majority of them had a lifetime of mental health issues. Several, I think almost all of them, except Sally, the youngest one, had nervous breakdowns. And remember, if you've listened to, there's a few specific podcasts where I've talked in detail about what they used to do. You don't just go to the mental institution like you do today, and there's medication and there's things that they do, all kinds of therapy, different things that they do to help you. Back then, they actually used electroshock therapy, and it was literally the kind that is, horribly painful and devastating to not only the mind of the person, but the body. So it was horrible. It was a horrible thing. Now, I mean, they still do electroshock therapy, but it's safe. It's safer. But I mean, I can remember my grandfather never spoke of it. But my mother has consistently said part of, her issues, her nervousness, her anxiety is because she grew up during that time when her mother had a nervous breakdown, and she was not there. She wasn't present. She was literally in a mental institution or a hospital setting for a year, and they were allowed to visit once a week, and they had to look through a window into her room. They couldn't actually go in and touch her, see her, hug her. So that does something to a child, it really does. So neurochemical imbalances are powerful. And then there are non-neurochemical imbalances. For example, a condition like hypoglycemia, which arises when the blood and sugar levels fall. Most of us are very aware of what that is. And the blood and sugar levels fall down, resulting in abnormal neurological functioning. And it's been associated with antisocial and violent behaviors. So even something as common as hypoglycemia. My husband is a type 2 diabetic. Well, he's like borderline, but he's still treated as a diabetic. And if his blood sugar drops, he can't function. You can tell he can't think clearly. He's very, very dizzy. He just has really bad episodes like that. And I tend to do that as well. Sometimes if I'm not eating right, I think all of us may have had some issues in our life. We can probably think back to where we were really shaky and really nervous and very anxious. And we knew that we had to get some sugar, and, if you try to do it the healthy way, you keep like those lozenges with you that help raise your blood sugar, but you can do candy or whatever, and it works, a Pepsi or a Coke, whatever you can do to counteract that. But did you know it was associated with antisocial and violent behaviors? I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was a link there. This was Fishbein in 2000 is who presented this information. So for me, that's just really quite amazing. Aggressive behavior has also been associated with irregular levels of the male sex hormones such as androgens, specifically testosterone. And that's not surprising. For me, that's not surprising. Typically speaking, the more testosterone, the more aggressive. And we have lots of men in this world who have, a great deal of testosterone, and they are, good, normal people. They're not violent or anything, but I would probably call them manly men, right? They have a lot of facial hair, body hair. They're very strong. They are usually big. I mean, there's a lot of different characteristics of someone who has a lot of testosterone. They use testosterone. Weightlifters have used that to help build muscles. So if you have someone who has any of these other characteristics in addition to a high level of testosterone, you have a greater chance of them having aggressive behavior. Serial killers may be born with a need for greater stimulation as compared to the average person. Ramsland noted that with low dopamine levels, the person seeks more stimulation and new avenues of reward, thus being susceptible to addictive and compulsive pleasure-seeking behaviors. We all know someone like that, who's constantly looking for that next thrill, that next high. They just progressively get more and more, the things they do are more and more dangerous. You see these people who jump off of cliffs. Kevin's always showing me, these videos of people jumping off these tremendously tall, high cliffs into a body of water. And I can't figure that out. And I also can't figure out people who want to jump out of an airplane. Just the mere thought of, I'm going to go up as high as I possibly can, and I'm going to jump out of a perfectly good airplane, and then hopefully my chute comes out and I gently land on the ground. It doesn't always happen that way.